Norman Lear really hated her more than anyone else. Norman Lear was born Norman Milton Lear on July 27, 1922 in New Haven, Connecticut during a time when America was going through huge money, problems, and big social changes. He grew up in a Jewish family during the Great Depression, and his childhood was full of tough times and emotional struggles. His father sold things for a living and went to prison for mail fraud when Norman was still young. This experience hurt him deeply and made him care a lot about themes like dignity, shame, second chances, and doing the right thing for his whole life. Even though things were hard, Lear found comfort in ideas and stories, radio, shows, and later movies. His mother's strength and sense of humor helped him feel better while seeing fake and dishonest things in everyday American life. Gave him ideas for his creative work later. From when he was young, Lear became really good at watching how people acted and naturally understood that comedy wasn't just fun, but a way to tell truths that made people uncomfortable. During World War II, Lear served in the United States Army Air Forces as a radio operator and gunner, flying dozens of dangerous missions over Europe. This experience changed him forever, facing death and seeing what happens when people are mean and controlling made him even more committed to freedom and human rights. Lear talked often later about how the war helped him understand his purpose, freedom to speak your mind, the importance of accepting different people, and the duty of citizens to protect democracy. These beliefs would become super important to both his creative work and his activism. After the war, Lear moved to Los Angeles and started working as a publicist before switching to writing for TV and movies. In the 1950s and 1960s, he helped write several popular comedies, including Come, Blow Your Horn in 1963, and Divorce, American Style in 1967, proving himself as a dependable and funny screenwriter. But it was TV, not movies, that would become his real place to shine. Lear realized that TV reached into American living rooms in a way nothing else did, making it the most powerful way to tell stories at that time. He also knew that TV had mostly avoided honest talks about race, class, gender, politics, and religion. Lear decided to change that. Norman Lear's biggest game-changing success came in the early 1970s when he created All in the Family. At the center was Archie Bunker, a working-class guy with lots of prejudices that were shown clearly through humor. The show dealt with racism, sexism, homophobia, abortion, war, and fights between generations, topics that were previously off-limits for network TV. Instead of lecturing people, Lear used comedy to show contradictions and make audiences think. Viewers laughed, argued, and thought deeply, often seeing themselves or their families in the characters. The show became hugely popular and started national conversations that went way beyond just the TV screen. Lear followed this hit with an incredible series of groundbreaking shows, including Maude the Jeffersons, Good Times, One Day at a Time, and Sanford and Son. Each show looked at different parts of American life, giving voices to communities that were rarely shown with depth and humanity. He made interracial friendships normal, showed working-class struggles, single, motherhood getting older and black, families moving up in society, completely changing representation in ways that still influence TV today. Norman Lear didn't just stick to entertainment, really worried about how politics, religion, and democracy mixed together. He became someone who spoke out loudly for keeping church and state separate. In 1981, he started People for the American Way, a group dedicated to protecting constitutional values. freedom of speech, and equal rights. Lear believed that being a citizen meant actively taking part. He talked passionately about voting, understanding how government works, and remembering history, especially to younger generations. His activism wasn't about picking political sides, but about following his principles. It was based on believing that democracy needs empathy, conversation, and people who are informed and involved. Norman Lear's personal life happened alongside and often quietly contrasted with his famous public career, showing a man whose experiences as a husband and father deeply shaped his view of the world, his empathy, and ultimately the humanity that defined his work. Lear's first marriage was to Charlotte Rosen, whom he married in 1943 during the crazy years of World War II. At that time, Lear was still a young man trying to figure things out, far from the cultural legend he would later become. Their marriage lasted through the difficult years after the war and went until 1956, a time when Lear was learning discipline, responsibility, and how complicated adult relationships could be. In 1947, the couple had their daughter, Ellen Lear, whose later job as a sex therapist showed a willingness, maybe inherited, to talk about sensitive, often taboo topics with openness and honesty. Ellen's career choice reflected the values that would later become central to her father's TV work, being direct, being honest, and believing that tough conversations are needed for personal and social growth. Even though Lear's first marriage eventually ended, it was an important chapter in his life, shaping how he understood family, closeness, and emotional responsibility. Soon after his divorce, Lear started his second marriage to Frances Lobin, 1956. This marriage happened during the most explosive time of his work success, as Lear changed American TV with socially aware programming. His family life grew, too. Frances and Norman had two daughters, Kate Lear, born in 1958, and Maggie Lear, born in 1959. Frances stayed his wife for 3 decades, a time that included the creation of landmark series and huge success. Their marriage ended in 1986, and the divorce became widely talked about because of how much money was involved. Frances reportedly got $112 million, one of the biggest divorce settlements on record at that time. While the public focused on the money, the length of the marriage itself, 30 years, showed a long connected personal and professional partnership that happened under huge pressure and public attention. Their daughters grew into successful adults. Kate Lear built a career as a business executive, working in corporate leadership rather than the entertainment world that was part of her childhood. Her marriage to Dr. Jonathan LaPook, a well-known CBS News medical correspondent, further put the family at the crossroads of media, public service, and expertise. Through Kate, Lear became a grandfather to Zoe and Griffin LaPook, grandchildren who represented continuity and legacy, keeping grounded a man whose work life had changed national conversations. Maggie Lear, though more private, stayed an important part of Lear's growing family story, reinforcing his role not only as a cultural icon, but as a father whose influence reached well beyond TV screens. In 1987, Lear started a third marriage, this time to Lynn Davis, a relationship that marked a new phase of life, one defined by, looking back, maturity and renewed commitment to family. This marriage brought new children and a different pace to Lear's later years. Their son, Benjamin Davis Lear, was born on July 10th, 1988, a date Lear later wrote about in his memoir, Even This I Get to Experience. The title itself showed Lear's lifelong philosophy, a deep thankfulness for life's moments even as he got older and time became more precious, becoming a father again in his mid-60s wasn't just about having another baby. It was an emotional reaffirmation of Lear's lasting optimism and involvement with life. In 1994, Lear and Lynn had twin daughters, Madeline Rose Lear and Brianna Elizabeth Lear, growing his family once more and giving him the rare chance of raising young children while also thinking back on decades of accomplishment. The twins represented renewal, new beginnings late in life, and showed Lear's belief that curiosity, love, and responsibility don't go away. With age, his later fatherhood made his perspective richer, strengthening the compassion and inclusiveness that had always driven his work. Across 3 marriages and multiple generations, Norman Lear's family life mirrored the complexity of the human stories he told. On screen, his relationships were marked by growth, challenge, reinvention, and continuity. As a husband, father, and grandfather, Lear lived the very themes he championed publicly, that families are imperfect, always changing, and deserve understanding. In the end, his personal journey wasn't separate from his legacy. It was a vital part of it, shaping a man who believed that every stage of life, every relationship, and every experience, even the hard ones, was something to be fully lived and deeply felt. Among the many actors who worked in Norman Lear's TV empire, no relationship was more complicated or more emotionally loaded than the one he had with Sally Struthers. To the public, Struthers was America's sweetheart, the wide-eyed, high-voiced Gloria Stivic on All in the Family. To Lear, however, she became something totally different, a symbol of frustration, betrayal, and creative disappointment that stayed with him for decades. At first, Lear loved her. He believed Struthers showed the innocent hope and emotional ups and downs he wanted Gloria to represent. She had a quality that felt real. Lear once said she wasn't acting clever. She was clever, and she didn't know it yet. In the early years, he defended her strongly against critics who dismissed her as annoying or not serious. Lear saw her as essential to the show's emotional balance, the bridge between Archie Bunker's cruelty and the audience's conscience. As All in the Family became a cultural phenomenon, Lear began to feel Struthers lost her discipline. He believed fame had made her careless, less invested in the craft, more worried about outside opportunities and public attention. She stopped listening. Lear said bluntly, "When someone stops listening, they stop growing, and I don't forgive that easily." To him, Struthers wasn't just an actress making career choices. She was abandoning the seriousness he demanded from his performers. What hurt Lear most was what he saw as ungratefulness. He had built Struthers' career, brought her into the national spotlight, and expected loyalty in return. Instead, he felt challenged, dismissed, and occasionally embarrassed by her behavior on and off set. "I gave her the best writing on television," Lear complained, "and she treated it like a stepping stone instead of a responsibility." That sense of personal betrayal turned into something deeper than just work dissatisfaction. Lear was also a notorious perfectionist, and Struthers' comedy style, big, emotional, sometimes over the top, began to annoy him. He felt she leaned into cartoon-like acting rather than truth. She played the joke instead of the moment. He said, "That's the fastest way to kill honesty." In Lear's mind, Struthers was no longer serving the story. The story was serving her ego. By the later seasons, the tension was impossible to hide. Lear's frustration with Struthers was bigger than his conflicts with any other actor he worked with. "I could argue with Carol," O'Connor, fight with Rob Reiner, disagree with anyone, Lear admitted, but with Sally it felt personal. That's what made it worse. He didn't just dislike her choices. He felt emotionally drained by her presence. What makes Lear's feeling so striking is how long they lasted, long after all in the family ended, long after the cultural fights had started had cooled down. His bitterness towards Struthers stayed sharp. He rarely softened his words when her name came up. Time didn't fix it. He said, time just gave me clarity. To Lear, clarity meant realizing that she disappointed him more deeply than anyone else he worked with. Yet, even in his harshest judgments, there was a hint of regret. Lear understood that his expectations were huge, maybe unfair. He demanded not only talent, but moral seriousness, intellectual growth, and total dedication. Struthers, with her lighter style and desire for independence, was never going to meet those demands fully. Maybe I wanted her to be something she wasn't, Lear admitted, but I don't apologize for wanting more. In the end, Norman Lear strong. Negative feelings towards Sally Struthers weren't based on hatred alone. They were based on broken belief. He had seen greatness in her, imagined a deeper legacy, and felt she wasted it. For a man who viewed TV as a moral battlefield, that failure was unforgivable. And so, among all the stars who challenged him, disappointed him, or defied him, Sally Struthers remained the one who hurt him most. Lear died at his Los Angeles home on December 5th, 2023 from cardiac arrest as a complication of heart failure. He was 101. His body was cremated